So welcome back again. In this lesson, we're going to do something quite simple and quite often useful, and that is how to start a timer. So I'm going to go to Xcode and I'm going to start a new playground this time. We haven't done that in a while. So I'm going to say playground, and this one is going to be timer playground. Perfect. And I have it there. Alright, so what I want to do is this. It's a very simple thing. I'm going to say class. I'm going to call it my class. And then my class is going to have essentially two functions. One that runs a timer and the other one that happens every time the timer runs itself. So a function to trigger timer, a function that timer calls. So essentially one of them is like saying, hey, run the timer. The other one is saying, so in every second or every 2 seconds or every 10 seconds, what do you want to happen? So that's going to be simple. I'm going to say function, and my function, I'm going to call it run timer. It has no parameters, no return type. And in this body, I have only one command, timer dot schedule timer with time intervals and user info. So there's a lot of information here. Let me quickly explain what you have to do with them. So the time interval is how often you want something to happen. I'm gonna say every second, and this is a floating number. So you could, for instance, say every millisecond, every thousandth of a second. But for now, one target is going to be self. There's going to be a function right in here. Selector is going to be a method that we need to add. So that's the other function. I'm going to say the other one is called, let's call it print time. So all we're going to do is we're going to print time now, but you can simply imagine how you could expand on this to I don't know, make a clock, even make an analog clock by using transformations, so on and so forth. But for now, we're just gonna say print, and that print is gonna say hi, for instance. Now, my selector is going to be this method. Now, here is a challenge that you have to essentially be aware of. As of Swift version 4, you need to expose anything that is using a selector to Objective-C. That means you have to add an @Objective-C in here. And I will show you in a second what happens if we don't have it. Let me say there is no user info, and let's say there is going to be repeating itself. And let me drop that and we'll see the error. So now it says argument of selector is not exposed to Objective-C, and this is a necessity as of Swift version 4. So if you want, you can actually go to terminal and say xcode run Swift-version, and it tells me that I'm using version 4.2. That is essentially a command from the Xcode command line tools. If you don't have the Xcode command line tools, which offers a lot of flexibility when you're working with projects, and we'll see it sometime in the future as well. But for now, if you don't have it and you need to install it, you can of course do a quick search for it. The command you will end up needing is xcode select -- install, and that's going to install Xcode command line tools. So Xcode space -select and then install. So that's not what we are doing. We wanted to know the version of the Swift that we're using. We're using 4.2, and anything above 4, you need to expose your functions in selectors to an Objective-C by calling @Objective-C. I'm guessing sometime down in the future they're gonna change that, but for now this is how it works. So let's go ahead and use this timer. So to use that, I'm going to go ahead and say I have a variable called my object, which is of course my class, and then my object does run timer. So it runs that timer. Let's go ahead and see what that does for me. And it says hi, 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 A constant, it says hi once every 1 second. Now let's go ahead and make this a little bit more exciting. Let me delete that so I can get myself a little bit better spaces in here, and delete that one as well. All right, so here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna say in my class I have something called var time, and that's going to actually be a float that it actually has a value of 0 at the very beginning. And then here's what's going to happen. Every time we go to print time, we're going to say time plus equal, let's add a 1/10 of a second, and then let's go there every 1/10 of a second. And now I'm going to say print time is, and time is going to be time. Now if we run this, you will notice that the float interpolation doesn't return us the exact numbers we were expecting. So we kind of need a way of rounding it or showing only 1 decimal space. And to do that, I'm actually going to change the print argument in here. I'm going to say the argument I want is a string with format, and the format I want is going to be %.1 decimal space, and the value is time itself. So essentially I'm saying format this value at 1 decimal space and print it for me. Let's run this again now. And now we get exactly what we expected. It 2, 3.1, 3.4.1, so on and so forth. If you wanted, I could go ahead and say go every 100th of a second and give me 2 spaces, for instance. It's going to run a lot faster. In a lot of cases, you want to go at every 1 second or anything of the sorts. Of course, you know how to connect all of these things into variables, so you don't need to change it in 3 places. You can change it only in 1 place. And that's about that, running a very simple timer. So I'll see you in the next lesson then.